Arena. Here's Rick in New Canaan, Connecticut. We got a lot of New Canaan calls today. They're coming out of the woodwork. Rick, good afternoon. How are you today, pal? What's going on?
Hey, Christopher. How you doing?
All right, Rick. Always a pleasure to have you on. Now, let me hear what you got to say.
Hey, I was calling about the Yankees, but since you're on basketball, I just think the NBA's become almost not a serious league anymore. It's more entertainment, where you got 27 teams that are the Washington Generals and 3 teams that are, have a chance.
I think it's a major problem. I think the NBA has gotten into the exhibition stage of their year way too soon. Silver will never admit it. He's a good commissioner, but he'll never admit it. I don't know how he's going to solve this. Players wanting to play with their buddies and they gang up and everything else. There's just no competitiveness in the NBA. They play too many games. They play too many games to eliminate too few teams, and the best teams always win. That's the problem.
And the players are in control of where they want to go.
That's a problem, too. Now, I do think that the trades with this weekend with Cleveland, I think that adds a little juice to it. You can make it that Cleveland's at least watchable right now to see how they handle this. But I think overall, you're 100% right. I think the NBA... Now, listen, all these sports have an issue. You want to watch an NHL game right now? Is that important to see a hockey game? You want to watch an NCAA? You wrapped up in Michigan State, Purdue. You had to watch that this past weekend. Why'd you have to watch that so much? All these winter sports that have a lot of their teams enter the postseason, very few eliminations, and in hockey and in the NCAA, it's Russian roulette, and in the NBA, the good team always wins. So these winter sports are in a very tricky spot, Rick. They always are. How to make their regular seasons more significant? It's a very tough question for these commissioners in these winter sports. Go ahead.
Very tough. I got the thing about you had Slick Leonard on a couple of weeks ago. That was a great guest. It got me thinking about the NBA, the ABA, how enjoyable that was to watch.
Very good point. You heard Slick Leonard. He was great. Yeah, he was. We enjoyed that. That's a good job by Eddie tracking him down. That was a good spot. The old Minneapolis Lakers. Sometimes you
haven't got him talking about his Pacer days with that group, the team he coached.
Pat Cosgrove would be on top of that, like you, my ABA buddy. Indiana was the first dominant team in the ABA. He only played about 7 or 8 years. A lot of those championships were won by the Pacers, either before or after McGinnis. You had Kentucky being great, the Colonels. The fun. The ABA had, obviously, Julius won a couple of championships. The ABA had some good moments. There's no question about it. Go ahead.
Hey, so when I was calling out in your opening, you're talking about the Yankees. I think, the pressure's less in the Yankees. It's really on Cash, for not bringing back Girardi. I think that's, that time will tell. I mean, we kept hearing how, Girardi was really tight, but I really looked at him as professional. You ever, you watched him on the, the post game. He answered all the questions. Was very professional. Did a job and did a great job the last couple of years. I think if he made a mistake, he overplayed his hand during a regular season, by never saying, I want to come back. He kept saying, well, let's see. I think he was trying to negotiate a little bit too much.
Yeah, there might be some truth to that. A good call. He wanted to come back there, Rick, at the end. I think Cashman just wanted to make a change. I don't think the Yankees wanted to pay him either. I mean, the Yankees will never admit it. And everybody I've talked to said it's not true. But, I mean, the Yankees are hell-bent on getting under $187 million or whatever the luxury tax is. Maybe $197. Whatever it is. They're hell-bent on getting under that. You're telling me they wanted to pay Girardi $20 million for 4 years when they could have paid... think about it. I mean, the manager of the New York Yankees is making $4 million for the next 3 years. I mean, think about that for a minute. I mean, these are the New York Yankees now. I mean, this is a huge, huge franchise. And they're getting... This is probably the biggest franchise in all of sports, when you think about it. The Yankees. Worth the most, biggest franchise. And they're paying the manager about $1 million a year to run it. I mean, that is... my gosh. I mean, that's where and I think that had something to do with why Girardi was out of there. And I think Rick is right. I think there is more pressure on Cashman indirectly because he's the one who wanted Girardi out. And if Boone doesn't do a good job, that's going to look bad for Cash. 100%. Anthony in Phoenix, Mad Dog Unleashed. Tony, good afternoon. How are you today? What do you have for me?
Hey, Mad Dog, did you read Marvin Miller's book on how he changed the game?
That's a long time ago. That book came out in 1992, I think. And I did read that book, 91 maybe. I did read that book, and I actually had Marvin Miller on TV when that book came out. I'd have to go back and refresh my memory after all these years. Now, Marvin was brilliant, and he wanted to make sure you knew that. That's the best way to explain Marvin. Marvin is one of the all-time great litigators. He did the coal miners forever, long before he did baseball. He's the reason why that union is so good, but he also wants you to know that. Humility is not necessarily was not Marvin's number one deal. Go ahead. Next.
Yeah. Do you remember in the book when Finley wanted to make every player a free agent, and the other owners went crazy, and Marvin Miller states in the book that would have broke the union?
Yeah, because he would have had a supply and demand situation. That would have been a mess. Yeah, Finley may have been right. The problem with it is, and that's a good call, Anthony, the problem with it is he would have been bad for the fans, too, because you could never have looked at a particular, it's almost like it'd be like basketball. Basketball right now, rooting for these college basketball teams is a disaster because they leave after a year. 5 months, they're gone. And that would have been a little bit like that in baseball. You would have had trouble building up some camaraderie with your favorite team. Scott in Tampa, Mad Dog Unleashed. Scotty, good afternoon. How are you today, pal? What do you have?
Hey, Doggy, how you doing?
Fine, Scott. Thank you. What's on your mind now? Fire away.
On the baseball, I think this whole free agency brouhaha that people are talking about, because it's so overblown. The problem with this year's free agent class is there's just not anybody good in it. Outside, in my opinion, the best one left is Hosmer. Outside of that, I mean, J.D. Martinez, a guy that you said played 140 games once in his career, has 230 homer seasons. He's looking for $200 million over 7 years. Is he out of his mind?
I mean, Boris can ask for that, and normally he gets what he asks for. But I think that's got a lot to do with it. I think the free agents are not that good, and the teams will spend if the player is worth it. I think you'll see Harper and Machado break records next year. But right now,
Goldschmidt, when he becomes a free agent, will get a huge deal.
Yes, he will. Good point. Good job on him. That's after 2019. I think that and Goldschmidt signed for a low contract the first time. If he's smart, he'll ask for the moon the second time. We'll see how he handles that. But I think the low-quality free agent is as big a deal with this free agent scenario and the market as anything else. You're right about that. Next, go ahead.
And then the other thing on it, Chris, is look, this collusion thing doesn't make sense too for people who bring it up, because the Cubs signed Yu Darvish for $20 million a year. A guy, as you said, won 50 games in his career. And would you trust Yu Darvish even pitching a playoff game in your kid's little league? Because I wouldn't.
I wouldn't either. Good call. I would not trust Darvish, not after what I saw. And he's never been good in the playoffs. He wasn't great for them either. And remember, he's got a very bad record against good playoff teams. I think he's made 15 starts in his career. You think it'd be more than that. But I think it's only 15 starts in his career against playoff teams in that particular year, which makes sense because, let's say he's been hurt, he missed the whole year with the Tommy John. But he's only made 15. And he's got a 5.25 ERA. Here's Patrick in Albany, New York, and he's with us here on Mad Dog Unleashed. Patrick, good afternoon. How are you today? He dropped Tom in Philly, and he says hello. Tom, good afternoon. How are you today? What do you have for me?
I'm good, Chris. How are you today?
Fine, Tommy. Nice to have you with us. What's happening now?
All right. Have you ever had the pleasure to listen to any of your own promos in terms of being the most passionate man in sports?
I'm familiar with them. What do you mean, pleasure to listen? We can play a couple now. They're funny. Go ahead. Let me hear.
Well, it pegs you as the most passionate man in sports. For a guy that's that passionate that doesn't watch the Olympics, which is a global athletic event, same thing with, I'm sure, is the World Cup of soccer.
No, I watched that. I watched a little of that.
All right, so if we,
I'm sorry, I'm not watching this an Austrian skier on the downhill. I don't look at those sports, and maybe we should change it, Tom. I'm having trouble getting into it. What can I tell you? I mean, I could lie to please the promo and say, wow, we can do Olympics all day, but I'm not going to do that to you. I mean, I gave you a couple of spots on it. I gave you Jim Bell, but I cannot. Now, if you're into it, God bless you. I give you all the credit in the world. But if you're into the Olympics, I don't think that makes you less or more passionate than anybody else. It is the Olympics, for crying out loud. It's not Game 7 of the World Series. It's the Olympics. I can't get into it.
Philadelphia last week with the with the lack of people at the NBA game.
Well, Philadelphia, for some reason, Tommy, Philadelphia's got a lot of trouble grasping the idea that for years they didn't support the NBA. And for whatever the reason. Maybe they came from Syracuse, they lost a lot, they lost in finals a lot, whatever the reason. For years, they did not support good teams, Irving's teams and everything else, Wilt's teams, and the Philadelphia sports fan doesn't like hearing that, but it's true. I mean, what else can I tell you? It's true. You drew 6,000 people. You drew 6,000 people for a divisional semifinal against the Milwaukee Bucks, a team that had Julius Irving on it. That's disgraceful. You can't defend that.
Okay, well, I could argue the socioeconomic demographics of Philadelphia in terms of being on Easter Sunday. If you've ever met anybody...
Why was there 30,000 people that day at the Philadelphia-Philly-Chicago Cub game?
Chris, the Vet held 70,000. That was half full.
Well, it didn't hold 70, but they had 30,000. You had 30,000 across the street for a Philly game and 6,000 for a Sixer playoff game. Explain.
Which you could get into at the time for $4.
Oh, stop. Now, don't give me the economics of it, Tom. Stop making excuses, Philadelphia. Your Flyers sold out every time, and those tickets aren't cheap. Boy, oh, boy, Philadelphia, good call, Tom. Philadelphia cannot get over the fact that I don't want to... there's two things that bother me about Philly. That's one of them that you just heard. And number two, they think, as I've said 1,000 times the last 7 or 8 days, they seem to think that they are more passionate about the Eagles than other football fans are in other towns about their team. And the answer is they are not. They are not more passionate. Are the Eagle fan more passionate than the Cub baseball fan? Or the Royal baseball fan and had 1.5 million people show up in downtown Kansas City when the Royals won? And the Eagle fan likes to think that he has the badge of honor of being the most loyal NFL fan on the planet. He's no more loyal than a Giant fan. He's no more loyal than the Packer fan. He's no more loyal than a Lion fan. He's no more loyal than a Bear fan. Now, he might be more loyal than a Rams fan. I'll grant you that. Or the Texans fan, or the Cardinals fan, or the Dolphin fan. I'll grant you that. But the other Northeast big markets, he is not. Mr. Torres.
By the way, I meant to tell you that when we were having that discussion about that Game 7 between the Bucks and the Sixers, which you've been referring to repeatedly,
yes,
about the 6,100, there were some people tweeting at me and actually said pictures, this is for you and Dog. Look at the crowd. It's packed. I don't know what you're talking about. And then somebody else said it was actually 16,000. It wasn't 6. I don't know. But, I know you
Steve, they can show anything they want. Remember, they played the Bucks a lot those years, and there was a lot of games in that spot. We looked at box scores. Sports Illustrated. Anthony Cotton wrote the story. Mm-hmm. I saw the game. 6,700 people.
Yeah.
I don't know why the Philadelphia sports fans...
Boy, they're sensitive.
Oh, they don't like to hear it. And you want me to give you... How about if I give you a couple of Wilt Chamberlain games at the old Philadelphia Convention Center against the Celtics? You want me to give you the crowds in those games?
Sure, why not?
I mean, I can look them up.
No, I'm kidding.
I'm
kidding.
Not good. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, you've been on that.
And they can't deal with that. And I know you think the Eagle fan's a bit of a fraud, too, as far as his passion for his football team. You've said that to me.
I have.
You may not want to say it on the air.
No, I don't think I've ever uttered those words. You try to, brainwash me into saying that, but I don't think I've said it. Are you getting into college hoops yet?
No.
Getting close?
No, I'm not.
You're looking at those possible mid-majors that could be squeezed out?
Well, that sounds like Western Kentucky's not going to get a bid. I thought they won at Purdue, for crying out loud. I don't know where the game was, but they did beat Purdue.
Yeah, I think it was in the Bahamas or something like that.
Well, Western Kentucky beating Purdue. They beat somebody else. They beat 2 good teams. You're telling me Western Kentucky? Go look at Western Kentucky's schedule for a second, please.
Sure thing. There's another good team is, believe it or not, is Vermont. They haven't lost in their league yet, and their losses...
Did they beat Albany last week? They were losing that game.
They were down 7. They were missing one of their big starters, Albany, and then, Vermont was missing one of their key players, but they did come back and win. They were down 17, and they came back and won.
That game was on television, and I watched some of it, Albany and Vermont. Give me the Western Kentucky schedule, if you may.
Yes, I'm just pulling up the conference here. Western Kentucky, remember, they're in 3rd place in their we're tied for 2nd. So they're 18-7 overall, and they've got 2 conference losses.
All right.
So they lost to Missouri State out of conference.
All right.
A loss by only 8 to Villanova.
Okay.
They did beat Purdue by 4. Beat SMU by a bucket. SMU not bad. Out of conference, lost by 1 to Wisconsin's having a down year.
Game was at Wisconsin, I'm assuming?
It was. At Ohio, they lost by 5. And then in conference, they lost to Belmont and Middle Tennessee State and UT San Antonio.
Yeah, they probably won't get in. Yeah. The Purdue game is not
unless they can win the conference tournament, and then you never know.
Right, exactly.
But Vermont's had a very good year.
All right, let me look at Vermont. You're making a big deal about them. Let me hear.
All right, let me get the standings up here. All right, so Vermont 11-0 in conference, 21-5 overall. They lost to Kentucky by 4. Lost to Bucknell by 4. Bucknell's leading their conference. Bucknell, by the way, last night I was actually watching this. I know you think I'm crazy. They were down 10 to Colgate with 1:05 left and 1 at the buzzer.
Wow,
so
that's hard to do.
Lost to Marquette by 10. Lost to Northeastern by 4.
You got a win that's good?
Lost to St. Bonaventure by 2.
I mean, these are all losses. Yeah. I mean, they got to win.
Let's see. Richmond not having a good year. Yale.
No, you don't have a win. How am I going to put Vermont in the tournament?
Conference.
You got to win. That's halfway decent.
They're not going to make it unless they win their conference tournament.
Right, there you go.
Unfortunately. They've had a good year, though.
I hear that you might send Patrick Mawa and company to spring training in 2018.
Yeah, we're thinking about having him go to, obviously, the close trip from
Does
the
he
LA area
realize
to
that he
Arizona.
has to get to the ballpark at 6 o'clock in the morning,
Yes, he does,
walk in the clubhouse and with a microphone and conduct about 9 million interviews?
Yeah. Well, that's the only
with a lot of players?
We're not going to do like a live show from there. We would do it in a, in other words, we'd have him tape and then hook him up in a studio for his actual show. So yeah, he's.
So he go to spring training, do the show, get the material that he needs, and then walk into a studio. What's the word I'm looking for? A flat studio to go out there and do a talk show. An antiseptic studio. That's what we're going to do now?
Yeah, well, I mean, if you look at our Major League Baseball channel, they don't do live stuff from the site anymore like they used to and how you used to. So that's kind of, it's taped. They tape a lot of their stuff. Now, they may, I don't know if the MLB guys actually do it from the location. They might, but they don't do any of the interviews.
Are you okay with Patrick Mawa doing it this way?
Of course I am.
And he's going to go to Clippers practice and get 30 minutes with DeAndre Jordan?
Yeah, well, we're efforting that. Yeah, that's a possibility. But I think the spring training makes some sense. It might work out. And he knows the deal, the schedule. Got to go early. Can't expect to just waltz in there.
Well, you got to get the manager. You got to get the managers on. Can you get the managers?
Hopefully.
Can you get Joe Madden on for 10, 12 minutes?
That's
what you got to do.
Yeah,
you can't go to spring training and spend all that money without getting a manager.
Yeah, obviously. Yeah. I mean, we're going to probably focus on the Dodgers and the Angels since he's based in L.A., and then we'll see what else we can come up with. But that's kind of, we're looking into it.
I've been looking forward to following that story.
Yes.
Steve Torrey's got a sports bite. He's on Mad Dog on